And welcome to another episode of 50 Shades of Grey, where you have been asking me for a man's opinion. And I'm going to try to give you that today. We've got one and a half men, me being the half, and a man the other. And I welcome my friend Steve. Welcome, mate. Thank you for coming on.
Nice to be here, Elliott. Always good to give a perspective, I guess.
So myself and Steve, just to give you a bit of background, we've been friends since our early 20s, and we've had parallel lives, I would say, that have run like train tracks along the side of each other, twisting and turning
Into,
on the way,
into the
but
siding.
seeming to come into the same station at different points in our life. So I'm going to kick off today, Steve. Like you're a single guy in midlife. So what is a single guy in midlife looking for now?
So, I mean, to be real, I'm actually looking for a relationship. So, I think we just discussed, didn't we, that I was signed up on a dating website. So, I've just cancelled my subscription. So, I've been on for 3 months. So, I've done this a couple of times now. I will go onto these websites, and give it a proper go. So, I'm one of these people that I'll dip in and out, but I'll be active. So, I'll actively try and meet people for all of the right reasons, as far as I'm concerned. All of the compatibility reasons. I'm just not looking for one night stands. I'm looking for a connection. My biggest bugbear at the moment is trying to actually get people to engage because there's too much choice. Because, as far as I'm concerned, I want to meet one person, but he's obviously talking to 20 people at the same time at different stages. So, if you date someone, they might score you as a 7. They might think there's a 10 or a 9 out there. No one ever really commits on these things. I mean, it's one of those situations where I think that's where the marketplace is. That's how you meet people in midlife now. It's getting more and more difficult. I mean, I'm quite a social person. I'm out a lot, but you don't meet women in their 30s and 40s out. They're just not there.
So so from experience of obviously knowing you a long time, I can vouch that you are out there. You're sort of doing the miles. You're always out. You're a very social person, and you're probably out 3-4 nights a week. So opportunity to meet people for you is abundant in terms of you're in the right places. But are you just finding that a lot of women in midlife are not out there then?
Uh, so I do a lot of functions. I do a lot of socials. I get quite a lot of corporate through work. So you will meet people of a certain age, but I think a lot of the time people are there as, as wives or girlfriends. And then, the other issue is a lot of people that are out, you kind of hit that headline where it's 30 years old, anything under 30. So if you're in a bar or a restaurant, most people, you'll see groups of guys, 40s and 50s, whatever. The guys seem to be a lot more social in older age. Whereas women, I guess, because of the kid thing, because of social networks, because women maybe don't maintain as many friends, you just don't see as many women of that age group out there. I still do meet people, interactively when I'm about in the natural way. But I think as well, people rely so heavily on websites now. People have a social environment through dating websites, and that's what women rely upon. So maybe they're not going out as much because they're just relying on the apps.
So I personally, I've not done the apps for a good few years now. Have they changed in the last few years? Which one was you using, if you don't mind me asking?
So Match and Hinge mostly have been the ones I've used recently. But mate, they're exactly the same. I've done this a couple of times. I was on them a few years ago. Nothing's changed. The format's the same. It's a tried and tested. And the thing as well, you see the same people on them. So I've come
Yeah.
across 3 or 4 people that I've spoken to on previous apps that are back on still looking. So, I can't claim that I've been any more successful than them because we're all in the same boat. So I mean, I'm still optimistic. It's easy to get jaundiced about the whole thing, but you never know. Yeah, my person might be around the corner. Who knows?
You're a very optimistic person, and like you said, you always look at your cup being half full as opposed to half empty, and something maybe round the corner. What advice would you give to people? Because I've spoken to a lot of women that have actually said that they're kind of giving up now. That they express the same story as you just have, and they've got to the point it was like, I'm just giving up. You know, what would you say to those people that are like, I'm just going to give up?
Well, mate, okay, if you give up, where does that leave you? It doesn't leave you anywhere, does it? It just leaves you stuck indoors on your own, thinking about what could have been. Um, so my biggest thing is, if you engage with people, if they seem okay and they seem normal, go out for a coffee, all right? It's half an hour of your life. Try and meet somewhere central so you both don't have to travel for 2 hours, but just give it a go, right? How bad can it be? One coffee, right? So I've had, on this latest interaction on these apps, I've had a few dates where literally I've had 4 or 5 people cancel lastminute.com. So, within an hour of meeting, someone's suddenly been sick for 5 days, but haven't bothered telling me. So it's that nonsense, right? And I've had people do that. I've said, no, that's fine, no problem at all. Let's forget about it. And then they've texted me nonstop for 2 weeks trying to rearrange it. Well, just do it the first time, right? Because there's, there's you've got to be honest with people. I think try and be as honest as possible. If you get cold feet, I get it. Everyone gets cold feet sometimes. Can't be bothered. The weather's not great, but just fess up to that. Don't just make up a stupid excuse. And also, it validates, you as a person if you actually make the effort. So I put a lot of store in people actually making the effort to do stuff. Because that's what I do. I put a lot of, like you say, I'll do the hard yards. I put a bit of time and effort in. Uh, Women have to go to get dressed up, and they feel they've got to look a certain way. Got to be 100%. Are we ever 100% when we ever meet anybody? If you meet someone out in the real world, you could bump into someone in the supermarket. You're 50% of yourself. You know, you've been
Yeah.
out. It's probably a rough night. You look a mess. Sometimes it's just that interaction. You just get a feel. So. It's very hard to read chemistry off a text or a photo. So, the acid test is to actually meet people face to face, isn't it?
100% agree. So through everything, I remember myself. Have you done a lot of work on yourself through relationships? 'Cause you do get to the stage where you think, right, I've had a lot of failed relationships that haven't. Well, I wouldn't say failed; they just haven't worked out. So I don't look at it as failing.
No,
But the only
fail's a good name for it, mate.
but
Unsuccessful for various reasons.
yeah, I had a shot. That's what I'd say. I had a shot. But like you begin to look at it and think, right, the only common denominator in all of
Yeah.
this is myself. So have you looked and think, right, you know, what work am I doing on myself?
Yeah, we had a conversation off camera earlier, didn't we, about my last relationship. I was seeing someone with 3 kids, younger kids. So demonstratively, it meant that I was going to have to be involved if we ended up together in those kids' lives for a period of time. So I was willing to take on that responsibility. So I've put myself out there and said I'm willing to do that. She, I think, had been alone for a while, for a few years. Just got into that habit of just going out and dating once or twice a week, and that was her. That was her lane. She didn't want to move out of that lane, so having thrown myself out there and offered, to maybe kind of get a house together, support the kids, whatever, that wasn't what she wanted. So I think for me, you've got to look at where things have failed in the past. So whether that be, you're not making enough of an effort, everyone gets selfish, you get a bit, you get a bit blinkered sometimes in terms of what you want to do for life. You kind of push people in directions they may not want to go. So I think I've grown organically through the process, but we still make the same mistakes. It's unfortunate, as I said, I'm still making new mistakes as life goes on, and like the rules of the game seem to change all the time. So, stuff I learned 5 years ago that I thought I could put right, I do that now, and then the rules have changed, and so I've made a mistake again. So it's difficult. You've got to, it's an evolving process, but fundamentally, nothing really changes. It's still boy meets girl. Do you like each other? Do you get on? Have you got similar interests? So long as one of you hasn't got a psychotic issue, then you should be okay.
You say that though, mate. I do think that, and that's a great point that you make. It's not making the same mistakes. It's making new mistakes, because as you get older, people get more set in their ways. So, like you say, the landscape constantly changes. So in at your 20s, you know, when we went out a hell of a lot together in our 20s. Um, and you very rarely was meeting people who had kids or had their own house or had sort of split families. But now you're meeting, it's unusual if you're meeting someone that has got no baggage whatsoever.
Yeah.
Even if you meet someone with no baggage, they've still got a a life where they, like you say, your past relationship, they don't want to give up that independence. And I do understand that to a large degree. And it is about, like you just said, is how far do you want to move out of your lane? Or are you happy just going down that lane with someone else in another lane and occasionally merging together?
I mean, I mean, mate, I'm in the situation. My daughter's at university. Me and her mum broke up when she was 3. I've been like a weekend dad, holiday dad for that, yeah, her entire life, pretty much. So effectively, I've kind of reverted back to a single guy in his 30s. I've just got more money and more property now and a better job. In my head, I'm a better prospect than I was 20 years ago because I've got limited time, I've got a lot of free time, I've got lots of interests. So, that to me, it should be a marketable commodity. It just isn't for various reasons. So,
But
whereas I feel like the women you meet, obviously most women retain, possession of the kids, so they live with their kids. So, a lot of dads are weekend dads or whatever. So that's just the nature of the marketplace. So yeah, so I still struggle to understand what women are actually looking for because I think potentially people like me could be a good prospect.
I think a lot of women out there will love listening to a guy's point of view on this because it's usually a woman saying all of this. And that leads us into the next question that is, do you think that there's a markedly difference in opinions between men and women, or is it just people?
No, no. I mean, I meet a lot of normal ladies, basically. So, I mean, a lot of women out there are probably the same boat as me, and are just questioning why it hasn't worked out. Uh, the problem is basically there are a lot of people out there who, on the app thing, for example, people just want to validate the fact that they're still attractive and they can still appeal to the opposite sex. So you'll get a lot of people on apps that aren't interested. They're probably married, in relationships, are just looking for some sort of like, ego boost. So they like getting interest, but they are going to follow through on it.
Interaction.
Yeah, they just want some interaction. Someone they can sit, if they've got some spare time, whatever. Maybe it's a little kind of dirty secret of theirs, possibly. But but again, there's lots of people out there looking. I think you have to have realistic expectations about what it's really going to turn out to be, So, uh, we all kind of rate ourselves, I guess, to a degree. I'm definitely not a 10, probably slightly better than a strong 5. But, I just think that, people sometimes have got unrealistic expectations of who they're looking for. And I do hear like a checklist. So you will talk to people where there's loads of non-negotiables. I haven't got any of those. I don't care what someone does for a job up to a point, their circumstances, where they live, how much money they've got. It's about them as a person. But if you swing it around the other way, that's so important to women. Profession, status, finance, are you soluble? No criminal record, thank God. All those bits and bobs, which for most guys are irrelevant. So, I haven't got a checklist generally. I'm open to, I've dated lots of different, I've dated lots of different types of people at different age groups and stuff. When I was young, I dated older women. I've dated much younger girls before, basically. So, yeah, it's having the connection and meeting the right person at the right time.
So if you could give the women any advice about what not to do from the other side, that sort of is a definite sort of, and I hate the word, but red flag to guys, what would it be on dating apps or just generally on dating?
So for me, when you first start texting people, keep it light, right? So humor's a great win. So you can obviously hook someone with humor, but just keep it light. Don't be too stressy. Don't start kind of setting out parameters and goals and needs and wants, second text in. thing of it is, right, everyone wants a grand gesture. I heard a great story with some girl where some guy had arranged a date in Paris as a first date. So their first ever meeting was at Waterloo Station to go to Paris on the Eurostar. Who they apparently, on the way out, she decided she didn't like him. They had to spend 8 hours together in Paris. He booked lunch and dinner. He booked lunch and dinner, and they barely spoke on the way home, apparently. So I'm like, what? I mean, who got anything out of that? Other than a Paris merchant and maybe the restaurant. So, so for me, I'm, literally, it hasn't you haven't got to, grand gestures can come, can't they, if you want to meet someone, but you know, for a lunch or a coffee, just do that, right?
Yeah.
And do you know what? If you arrange to do that, actually bloody turn up, and don't cancel 55 minutes before you do the meet when it was going to take you that length of time to get there anyway. I'm
Yeah.
very much. I'll always turn up. I'm pretty reliable as a friend, but if I make a commitment, I will turn up because there's a reason I committed to do it. I find that loads of people get cold feet at the last minute, which I get. So I do understand that, but you know, it could be a half-hour coffee, right? If you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it. It's fine. So long as the guy doesn't follow you home, you should be safe.
Yeah. I mean, I always said when I was doing them, my advice to people was always don't chat on text messages for too long because you're in danger of actually having a relationship via text. I have a few messages and don't do the same old things like what do you do, blah blah blah. Just find out if you like each other, then have a conversation on the phone. I would always FaceTime people beforehand because I'd want to actually see that they were real because I'm a bit of a
Yeah,
paranoid person. And
no,
then,
no,
like you said, meet for a coffee because you can buy someone a coffee. It's £4 or £5. That's it. Especially for guys, because what the other thing that I found as a guy was it's bloody expensive dating for a guy because you do feel pressure and it's a societal pressure to pay for it. And I think you are judged for that. And I know women say we don't expect guys to pay. I always found that there was an expectation that you should do and that you were judged a little bit if you didn't.
mate. I mean, you've gone for a drink with someone, you might go for a couple of drinks, right? So, I've got no issue paying for all the drinks, but it's nice if someone else pays the second round. But if I've taken people
Yeah.
out for lunch or dinner, I've always paid. So that's not a problem. And that's a hit and miss situation, isn't it? So sometimes you meet someone that's great, that can pay dividends. Other times I've met people and, 5 minutes, 10 minutes in, I'm like, this is a mistake. This isn't going nowhere. I mean, that's the problem with that. I mean, I think like it swings both ways. You have to kind of do a bit of due diligence before you meet someone because
Yeah.
you've got to appreciate that you've got to drive somewhere, meet someone, you're going to spend time with them. Is it actually somebody you want to actually interact with? So you've got to be, but again, I'm like you. I don't want to spend, weeks texting someone back and forth, and then have you just like, a lot of those they just go down a rabbit hole, and they go nowhere.
Yeah. How long do you think it takes you once you meet someone in person to establish whether you like them or not?
What beyond the first date? Wow, she's amazing. Probably 3 dates. So
Yeah.
I've had situations recently on this site where I'll tell you. So I went out with someone 3 times, lovely, like really nice girl. I don't know if we want to stray into their backstory. They're quite an interesting backstory. So let me know. 3 dates in. Yeah, we got on. We had similar interests. Nice girl. We went to the gym together. Did a spa together. Second date and stuff. That was good. But day three, I just kind of realised it was just a friend zone situation. Really, I've got plenty of. I'm not looking for any more friends. I've got plenty of friends.
Yeah.
Oh, that was 3 dates. First date, thought she was really nice. Second date, shared interest, got on with each other. Third date, I'm just thinking maybe not. I mean, yeah, who knows? She probably thought the same, but she did have a she had quite an interesting story to tell about what happened to her.
Everyone's got interesting stories, mate. I think we've got a few of
That's
our
another,
own.
another
There's another podcast once I stop teaching.
yeah.
So I know, like you've mentioned it, you mentioned it briefly before. So you've just come out of what was, a, I say, long-term dating relationship. I'll put it in those sort of terms, because I would consider a long-term dating relationship 6 months plus.
Yeah, it's a
How do
year.
you
It's a year.
find Yeah, how do you find breakups in midlife now? Because, between us, we've had a few, and we've both had one bad one each, I would say, but we've had a lot more. How do you find they sort of change, like having a breakup in midlife? For you?
My last couple of relationships, I kind of met people naturally. So the last girl's a year. Like I said earlier, I kind of put it on the line a little bit. I mean, I offered to kind of, move house, take on her kids, the responsibility of that and everything else. So I thought I was doing all of the right things. And, we got on really well and we went out for a year. And I to some degree, got blindsided by why it went sideways. It kind of went sideways, I think, because she had just got used to being on her own for 6 years, supporting the kids on her own, didn't give her any money. And she just wanted a sort of twice a week relationship. She could get away from the kids, go out, nice meals, theatre, ballet, whatever, do things, and then that's it. So it's all pigeonholed. Whereas, I actually want a proper relationship, actually someone I can, live with, spend a bit of time with. I want people to have their own likes and interests, because we haven't got to be in each other's pockets the whole time.
Yeah.
Someone you get on with, someone you can interact with, someone your friends, you like their friends, your friends, family, whatever. There's some kind of synergy, that's what I want. So I think, maybe that went wrong for that reason. The previous relationship was a couple of years. I think, again, always thought she was a nice girl, just probably never thought it was going to be the end game for me. So yeah, swings and roundabouts, mate. I mean, it's like we've both been in the case where we've called the shots sometimes. Other times, people have dumped us. I think you've got to take the rough with the smooth there. Really, sometimes you've got to be in the game.
How have you taken it personally, though, mate? Have you found that different? Like, have you?
Yeah, I
It
mean, it hurts.
more
It
of a
hurts more. I said it does hurt more as you get older. Every knockback hurts a lot more.
really?
So yeah. I mean that situation there, particularly when you put stuff on the lines. I think when I was younger, and we've both been fault doing this, you think about yourself, you get up to, stuff you probably shouldn't, basically. So you're definitely at fault a lot of the time when things don't work out. I think this time I bent over backwards and I just spent a lot of time thinking about how I could make it better. So yeah, I mean, I think, I did everything in my power, I think, at the time. The problem is you can't change yourself, can you? So ultimately, you want to do as much as you can, but you're still that person. You still talk like you do. You still walk. You still, I don't know. You've still got the same attitudes and whatever. You still say the same stupid stuff sometimes. So you can't always change that. But yeah, it's definitely harder when you get older, because I think you just feel like there's less time in there.
Yeah, I do get, though, like we've said this on the podcast a couple of times. I do get there's a lot of women now and guys that are just they've got their own lives, they've got their own independence, and they want to maintain that. And to a large degree, I do understand that. And what they want is just like you said just now, that maybe she wanted was just someone to experience a night out with, and this and sort of the odd meal, but they don't want to give up their home where they live, their circle of friends, because that's their sort of security, isn't it? And they don't want to gamble that so late in life, because if it does go wrong, it's even harder now, I think, when you're older, to sort of readjust. And you, once you've been through divorces and everything else and breakups, you don't want to keep doing that again. It's hard enough breaking up without going through, right, who's moving out, or why did I sell my house to do this when that hasn't worked out?
Oh, mate, it's a big step. I get it. I mean, and like, you hear about relationships now where people in older age, they kind of live in their own houses, they still just date, they never
Yeah.
cohabitate, they whatever. So I get that. I mean, that could be appealing, I guess. I mean, I could do that. I mean, that wouldn't be a hardship for me, but I don't want to do that, because that's just dating, right? I want a proper relationship where I'm actually with someone, because when I've been in that situation, there's been times it's been great, and that's the essence. That's the best part of a relationship. Actually being together and doing stuff together and sharing experiences. And like, if you never get out of the dating game and you're just seeing each other like once or twice a week, whatever, what does that really amount to? And then also I think with that, you stay detached. So does it make you less faithful? Possibly. I don't know. If you feel like the other person isn't as committed as you want them to be, surely that's going to make you less committed. If something else comes along that's going to turn your head, probably. So, people want people to be committed to them, right? Show some commitment back.
So that was going to be my next question. I think you just answered it there, mate. Was like for you personally, is to describe your perfect relationship. So for you, would that actually be living with someone the whole time and life's completely intertwined, but retain your own interests as well?
Yeah, I guess an idealised situation is everyone's going to be working at different times. Someone who probably still works has got an outside life. They could, through work or through other social groups and stuff, other interests. Because we've all got our own like hobbies and stuff. So, we haven't got to live in each other's pockets because we're not our parents. Our parents, that generation before us, they were literally glued together mostly. Most of them were, a lot of them were in unhappy marriages and stayed together just because they were married. So, society's not like that anymore. People find it very easy to break up. So it's kind of gone the other way, but yeah, I think sometimes differences keep you together. You got enough space apart. There's normally enough room to maybe bring them back together again. But yeah, that would be my idealized situation. I mean, I could potentially just carry on dating for the next 10 years and be in the same boat 10 years time. But I don't really want that. I guess if that's the only thing that's an offer, that's what I'm going to be doing. So,
So
you
that's
know, so
so that's
otherwise
my
you
well, that's my next and final question, and in a positive way, really. But I guess as we sort of get older, have you thought what life would look like for you if you don't meet someone, or for you is your future in like entwined with someone else? Have you had those thoughts?
yeah, no, mate. I mean, I'm open to the idea that I'll never actually meet anybody now. So I think I've kind of got to an age where if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I've spent a lot of my time on my own. Similarly, I've been in relationships, but I am comfortable being the odd number at a dinner party. I've got a lot of friends. This year. So last Valentine's, I was out with a girlfriend, spent a lot of money, big restaurant, dinner, whatever, a great night out. This Valentine's, I'm going to Bath with a couple of uni mates and we're going to go and watch rugby on Valentine's Day. They're both married. Their wives don't put as much stock in the Valentine's Days as, us daters, but both the wives are happy that the husbands disappear on Valentine's Day and do their thing. But that's my plan. So, I can continue to do that forever if I have to. Obviously, later in life, I guess, as your friends thin out and stuff just happens, it'd be nice to be with someone. But, I don't want to just be with someone for the sake of it. I want it to be, a positive experience for me. It's a lot better. I'd rather be single and happy than with someone and miserable. But hey, watch this space, mate. You never know, it might happen.
Well, listen, mate, I really want to thank you for your candid honesty as always, because the one thing you have always been is honest, and you do speak from your heart as well, which is I think will be great for people to hear a man's point of view because we don't always get that. But thank you for joining me, mate. Hopefully, people will be able to find you on Match and was it Bumble or Hinge? Was it
Change, yeah. Well, in the
Hinge?
next 3 weeks, because I've cancelled my subs. I'll be off in 3 weeks. Back
So
to the real world.
have a look. Have a look at Steve. Right? He's on the dating apps now.
Yeah, yeah.
And you couldn't meet a nicer guy. But listen, mate, thank you for joining me on today's show. I really do appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Elliot. Thanks for the platitudes, and you take care of yourself, mate.
Guys, thank you very much for tuning in to Fist Chase and Grays. Make sure you subscribe and you follow and look out for us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Take care. Good night. Bye.